We've got figs.
Yep, I think we are. Yes, we are online now. What's happened? What happened? Why you laughing?
I don't know whether anyone heard this live streaming. I was just saying I was talking, if there's anyone listening, about I have like trees full of ripe elderberries, and I was just saying we also have ripe figs as well.
Okay.
That are there for the taking before the squirrels get them. But this is about astrology. Sorry, Rod. I've hijacked.
Don't worry. No worry. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Academy of Astrology podcast. Once a month, me, Mandi, and Marcus will be here talking about monthly transit. Usually, it's a full moon, new moon, and the important transit. Well, but last time we already covered the super full moon. So, I think people probably still interesting, so we can have a few comment about it, and then we will talk about, because we had a lot to talk about, isn't it? Because it's a very interesting, busy month in astrology. We have the Mars already changed side, and I think if you probably heard about 10,000 times, people keep talking something like a 6 planet retrograde or 7 planet retrograde, or everything is retrograde. What does that mean? I mean, to be honest, I'm quite happy because I did a quick research on YouTube. I want to see if there are any, kind of a very, very negative point of view. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it. Also, I'm happy, I'm very happy. Everyone just sounds like a very, very good, take slow down and something like that. Okay, we will talk about that later. So, hi, Marcus. Hi, Mandy. How are you?
Good.
Good. So,
yeah, one of the listeners, it's Mercury retrograde as at this time of filming. So if there are any audio issues, I'm not in my usual location, so we'll see.
Okay. We should prepare that because there's many. We will talk about it because at this moment there are kind of many planet retrograde, and I think we are quite probably, if I count it right, we have at least 3 planets is kind of stationary too. So that is a very interesting way to talk about. So maybe let's jump into the full moon chart. Just have a very quick, because it what happened 2 days ago. So have a very quick review about the full moon chart and see how we can use that energy. Should we?
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So here we are. We have the full moon and the super moon. It's a full moon, super moon, also blue moon. I mean, okay, we don't use that. We don't have a deep explanation in that, about blue moon. But this is a very interesting about the moon. It's moon at 7 degree Pisces, and the opposite sun is 7 degree Virgo, but the moon is kind of very close to Saturn. So what is your view about this super moon? Should we start with Mandi, because Mandi, we haven't heard about Mandi talk about it, but Mandi maybe already talk about it on her YouTube.
Yeah, certainly. I think the thing that struck me and stood out for me as a theme astrologically, but also a thing that was kind of occurring around me, is the issue of emotional maturity. The moon is emotional. The moon in Pisces is extra emotional. And Saturn, as we know, is about learning and wisdom, and it's about maturity. So the idea of emotional maturity, I think there's something about the moon and Saturn together in a chart that does always say something about emotional maturity. As we know, the moon takes just short of a calendar month to go around the chart, to go around all the planets and make all the aspects that it will make to Saturn. So they're not all going to be thematic of this, but because it's a full moon, because it's a lunation. And I certainly believe, and I've witnessed and researched, that the secondary progressed cycle between moon and Saturn has a lot to say about emotional maturity. So I think that's a major theme. It's quite an overwhelming full moon. It might have been sort of emotionally and feelings wise, but we have the sun there at the other end, the opposition. It's always an opposition, of course, a full moon. It's the full light of the moon. So the sun is shining its full light onto the moon, because the moon astronomically gets its light from the sun. Of course, the moon doesn't have its own light. So we can look to the Virgo there and we can think, what does the Virgo and Pisces axis mean? Well, it's about order and chaos. It's about the analytical and the emotional and the intuitive. So again, those are other sort of strong themes coming through. And we always look for a bit of balance when it's a full moon as well. So those balances of those two signs that I've just talked about, and Marcus will know a lot more about this and have probably something more to say about it, but often the Virgo Pisces axis, it says something about health. It says something about the healthy routines and habits and diet and general health as well. So maybe that's been something that has come up for people during this full moon.
So, Marcus?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we said a bit about it last time, and I think I talked about it being quite a sort of relatively serious and heavy full moon, sort of like a need to sort of empty the bins, sort of like the realities of life sort of coming up. And I really like the different angle that you had on it, Mandy, not incompatible, but different, where you're talking about emotional maturity. And so maybe if we were to sort of like Venn diagram those two, it'd be sort of like emotionally or psychologically speaking, emptying the bins, tidying up any, because tidying up is a very Virgo vibe, sort of any emotional situation that may have arisen that may require some sort of resolution, because full moons sort of bring things out onto the table. They sort of, anything that's sort of not being resolved tends to get highlighted at a full moon. And I think the positive inflection to this full moon is given by that Jupiter sort of trining and sextiling either end of it. And from a traditional perspective, Jupiter is in mutual reception with the moon, or a generosity with the moon, because Jupiter's in Taurus, which is the moon's sign of exaltation, and traditionally Jupiter rules Pisces. So it's like the moon is really liking Jupiter and Jupiter is really liking the moon. So it's going to super support that moon and sort of help to mitigate or like help people to digest some of the heaviness of the Saturn. So it is a full moon, I think, where you could practically start sort of with a bit of a heave a sigh, pull yourself off the sofa and get things done a bit and start tidying things up, but emotionally maybe start to sort of acknowledge some realities, and as you say, Mandy, in sort of an emotionally mature way, start to sort of really digest things and sort of come to some realizations, which may not be earth-shattering, but maybe just very more beneficially realistic in the long term, something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I have to say, Marcus and Rod, I did have in the lead up to this full moon, I did have something that happened that sent me into some emotional overwhelm.
Yeah.
And it sent me into my head, which is very Virgo and very Mercury retrograde, thinking things over and rethinking them over. And what I did actually unconsciously, that you've just made me sort of realize as you've been talking about cleaning out the bins, I literally, because I was so much in my head and there was so much emotional and mental overwhelm going on at the time, nothing serious, I'm fine, and I have lots of tools. And one of the tools that I used at this time was very Virgoing, thinking about it. I literally just cleaned my house from top to bottom. I literally spent days cleaning because I couldn't sit still to sort of do the usual things that I did. The meditations that I normally do it was a bit too much to sit in meditation, so my house was absolutely
that totally makes sense. No, that totally makes sense. You know what, I think I mentioned this last time, but William Lilly, the 16th 17th century horary astrologer, said, I always remember this, Jupiter likes to make things neat and sweet, because Jupiter tidies things up. So of course Virgo, is the sign that we associate with organizing and filing and tidying and arranging, but Jupiter also likes to, because it likes to try and improve things, and I think particularly in an earth sign, so it's the combination of those energies. It's like, right, okay, we're feeling crappy and a bit stagnant and a bit stuck, so let's just organize the space, let's empty the bins, let's get things. That was the vibe. So that's fascinating. And similarly, Mandy, I've not had just on the day of it, sort of like yesterday or whenever it was at the time of filming this, it sort of felt a bit heavy in the afternoon, but ended up having a few chats with our mutual friend Andrew that was sort of like inspired a few thoughts that were quite, just okay, just slightly reconfiguring some things in my head, which were quite useful. So yeah. What about you, Rod? What do you?
It is very interesting. It just makes me think about the I probably totally focus on wrong side, because when okay, that is not because when Mandi mentioned about a balance between the Pisces and the Virgo axis, and between the balance between the health things, and it's quite interesting when Marcus go back to the traditional view and comes up with similar things, and I always feel fascinating. Because I mean, when we study astrology, usually people say, "Oh, you are modern astrologer, you are traditional astrologer." It sounds like we are talking about different things. Come on, we are all Western astrologer. It's not we use one of us use the tropical zodiac, another one use the sidereal zodiac. They were different, totally different things. But usually, when it comes to we have different interpretation, but a very similar theme, and I feel fascinating about this. This is like Virgo and the Pisces. The general theme was similar, but the detail and the approach could be different, and that is so interesting. Should we go to that Mars, because I have my eyes on that Mars? It bothers me. Well, especially in UK's chart, it's on the IC. But but we know Mars was in the Virgo, and then so now slowly moving into the Libra. It is a interesting position for this Mars, isn't it, Marcus?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, traditionally, Mars would be said to be, and in modern astrology too, Mars would be said to be in detriment in Libra. I think more is made of that in traditional astrology, arguably, than is in modern astrology, because the essential dignities of the planets are sort of a big deal in traditional astrology, like how comfortable they feel in a given sign. But that like traditional astrology, people talk about it as if it's a monolith, and it isn't, because we're talking about a few thousand years of history across different cultures, and there were different nuances and interpretations and inflections. So it's thought now that the Greek astrologers, and some of the earliest, maybe the Babylonians, certainly the Greeks, didn't actually have this thing called detriment, which is when a planet is in a sign opposite to the one it rules. So of course Mars rules Aries, so it's said to be in detriment in Libra, or Mars traditionally ruled Scorpio, in detriment in Taurus. The Hellenics were more concerned about when a planet was in its fall. That was considered to be, it's really struggling. But they didn't really think much of whether they weren't bothered about it being in its detriment. It was only until the sort of early Middle Ages, and it's really the Arabic and Persian astrologers who made detriment, who really pointed out that detriment could have some issues with it. So to bring it round to Mars, a planet in detriment, I always think about the difference, because it took me ages to sort of pass the difference between these things. And Dr. Ben Dykes does a really good commentary on these in the introduction to one of his books, which is very helpful. But a planet in fall, it's almost like it's depressed because it's in circumstances that make it has to fight to be who it is. Like it's in circumstances that are really inimical. Whereas a planet in detriment, it's in the opposite sign to where it normally is, but it's sort of, so it's almost comedy sometimes. It's like, this is like a boxer in a ballet, or like Mars, the boxer, being forced to like perform in a ballet or something, but it actually is still quite powerful. It's just having to do the opposite of how it normally operates, but it can still bring all of its power. Like a boxer is a fit, sporting person. They can bring all their sport and dynamism to whatever it is. But here they're having to do Venus-y things. And this is Venus in Libra. It's an air sign. So it's all about social communication, getting on with people, that sort of thing. So some of the vices of Mars in Libra can be like passive aggression, or sort of like gossip, sort of attacking people through rumors and stuff like that. But at the same time, Mars in Libra can be a phenomenal advocate. So particularly, they're great for fighting on behalf of other people. And typically you'll find people who have Mars in Libra stronger in various ways. They're into social justice. I mean, obviously that has taken on particular connotations at the moment, but just in general, social justice can mean fighting for people you perceive as being the underdog, as being attacked. And that can be a Mars in Libra trait. The negative thing, that the detriment thing comes in, I think, because when you're using it for yourself, a planet in detriment may tend to, over time, undermine its own agenda. So for Mars, that can be good or bad, because Mars is traditionally a malefic. It's a difficult planet. So if you've got Mars can rule fighting and conflict, well, actually having the conflict undermine itself or come apart over time may not be a bad thing. On the other hand, if you're advocating for yourself or attempting to defend yourself, that may not be good if it comes apart over time. So it's a mixed bag, I think. But with Mars in Libra in general, it's like all of these things, it's how you use it. So it certainly gives more energy to social interactions and to potentially more energy to debate. And it's really good for fighting on behalf of others. But the negative side of it is it will tend to, like Mars in all the air signs, but particularly here it's one-on-one, it could amplify some of that passive-aggressive, gossipy, undermining of reputation kind of vibe too. So a bit of both.
Wow, always enjoy, Mandi, do you agree? Always enjoy listening Marcus talking about traditional astrology.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I absolutely love the phrase a boxer in a ballet, which is absolutely perfect for Mars, the fight, the boxer in Libra, the gracefulness of Libra at best, the grace of the dance. And the dance is probably more, I'm talking even metaphorically and symbolically, that Libra, the way it asserts itself and the way it sticks up for itself or others, there's more of a dance involved. There's more of a kind of like, you know, moving around and holding the other person and swinging them around. You know, I'm talking very symbolically now, whereas Mars in Aries, which is the opposite of Libra, goes straight and direct to the point, and that's it. There's no kind of dancing around the topic. And I also think another thing that came to mind as you were talking, Marcus,
it makes me think of capoeira. Yes.
Yeah.
Now we get a capoeira.
Exactly. And another image that came to my mind as talking was, you know, who would you know, when you're thinking of who you're going to send into a war zone, well, Mars in Aries would be the warrior on the front line, the diplomat. You wouldn't want to send Mars in Aries as a diplomat into a war zone, for example. Again, we're talking very symbolically here. So it's a kind of a more, like, as I say, Mars sort of asserts itself, Mars in Libra asserts itself a lot more sociably and cooperatively, where we're talking about the axis again between, I always think it's so useful when we're talking about a sign to talk about it in terms of the difference it has with the sign opposite, because they do come in pairs. So Mars in Aries is me, and there's nothing wrong with that, and Mars in Libra is we. So there can be something about indecisiveness with Mars in Libra, because you see both sides of the picture, you know, when you're having sort of a fallout with someone, or you have trying to assert yourself, well, I want this, oh, but they want that, and just for the sake of harmony, maybe we should, you know, that it's getting that balance right, isn't it? But Mars in Libra is actually can do some great things, as you said that. I love the other thing that you said, and I've never heard that before. There's almost like a comedy element to planets in detriment. So I really like that.
They are right for comedy. Yes. Awesome. Yeah, just had one final analogy thought, and I don't know, like Mars in Libra as a rap battle or something. No, it's a very verbal sign, you know, like spitting rhymes.
Love it. Love it. Should we try and do a rap battle now? What do you reckon?
Oh no, hell no.
Hell no. Hell no.
I would just like really.
I do have Mars in an air sign, but not not no.
I don't know.
Me neither. I couldn't.
Embarrassing. I'm way too stereotypically Caucasian to even attempt that. Sorry. Not gonna go there.
I lack of vocabulary between us.
Brilliant.
I like it. It's so funny when we talk about Mars. I agree with both of you, and it is very interesting. I think for some astrologer, yes, especially I mean, when we're talking about a planet in its disability sign or the detriment of fall, somehow I do find that well, yes, it has some limits or some challenge there. But also, I also do believe if this very modern concept is like we just use it, we just make it out. We just like make out of it. Like even Mars in Libra is not the maybe great Mars or not the most comfortable sign for the Mars, but it's still like you say. I like what Mars is talking about. Fight on behalf of other people. And that is very interesting, Mars, because I think I definitely 100% sure that Mars in Libra would definitely do that because they were just like saying something, oh, this is not right, this is injustice, I have to say something. And that is like a best Mars things in Libra, best Mars in Libra things to do, I agree. Yeah,
and they'll be a bit strategic about it as well. I think. I mean, that's the thing about Libra. It will, and I like the way you said, Rod. It will say something because that's the way that Libra will engage. It will say. Whereas, as you were saying, Mandy, Mars in Aries will just do. It's annoyed, hit somebody or kick off. Whereas Mars in Libra, they'll be annoyed on behalf of somebody else, and then they will think and say. So they might do it quite quickly. They might do it on the spur of the moment, but they'll take a moment to see how the back and forth is going and then say something. Because I'm just thinking about friends I know with Mars in Libra, and they do tend to be social advocates like that. And they might not stand up for themselves in a situation, but they will unfailingly, I've seen, if they think somebody's been treated badly and then oh no, this is not fair. Fairness being a Libra word, they'll step in and usually they'll step in verbally. They won't do something or take a rash action. So it's interesting, but I think it's still Mars in a cardinal sign, isn't it? So it can still act in haste and repent at leisure, but they'll be a bit more considered than maybe Mars in Aries would be, I should think.
Yeah, definitely.
It can be the charmer as well, getting what it wants, because Mars is about getting what you want and desires, and it can kind of charm the socks off you, Mars in Libra, especially. Yeah, the charm offensive, especially if there's other things in the chart that talk about that kind of charm and attitude. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, very interesting because I want to do a little bit commercial. I'm really sorry about that, but because we're talking about these planet in detriment, especially when Mars move into Libra, I just like it is a great opportunity because I just find one topic in our A.O.A online conference, Jupiter Live.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about this one.
Yeah. She's going to talk about how successful people turn stability into achievement. And she's going to talk about those planet fall and detriment in the chart, how we turn it into achievement, which I don't know how I make it, but I do have a planet for the detriment, which called Mercury, but this is my job too.
Yeah.
No stop. So I don't know how to turn it, but I'm looking forward to hear Jupiter saying that. And so, because we're talking about the A.O.A online conference, so I have to tell everyone a secret because although we say the early bird price and yesterday 31st August, but it's Mercury retrograde. I just blame them. I couldn't find my IT to update my website, so that discount link is still there and I couldn't take it down. So I have to waiting for finish of weekend and then he come back and I said, please take it down now.
Okay, so is the early bird price now expired or is it still there for people?
Still there. So if you have a chance and you haven't enrolled yet, please go to click that early bird price because it's half price. It's a half price.
And it's already a cheap conference, and there are some really, really interesting, exciting talks, Bill. And I'm particularly excited for Jupiter because she's a phenomenal astrologer, and I'm personally very interested in this topic. I have 5 planets in my chart in detriment or fall, so
look how successful you are.
I've got 2.
Okay.
And it's only cheap in price.
Yes.
It's only cheap in price. It's not cheap at all in terms of the quality of the talks and the astrologers.
Yeah, we have a Marcus. Marcus is going to talk about a little bit related to the medicines, right?
Yeah, medicines. I can't remember the exact topic, but it's something along the lines of sort of plants and planets. Some sort of like linking.
And Mandi going to talk about the minor aspect in the relationship. Wow, that would be so interesting. And we have really a talk for every area, successful and money wise and career wise, even technique, traditional and modern. It's amazing. So please enroll, and the link still there. So go to click it. Okay. So now, because I just planned Mercury retrograde, so we have to talk about it. I'm really sorry. Well, because one thing, and I have feel shame to say that, because something triggered me a couple days ago. I read a news in Taiwan. Astrology is very popular in Chinese area, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China. So everything. If you talk about Mercury retrograde, people will talk with you. Or now this time even more, it's like a astrologer talking about a 6 planet or 7 planet retrograde is going to evoke the bad karmic blah blah blah, and then we're just like, oh no. I really don't want to say something like that, and I really don't want to hear things like that. I thought we already out of that kind of view. 6 planet retrograde is a bad thing for whole world. It sounds like the way you talk, it sounds like it's the end of the world. And I really don't like it. That's why before we start, I don't want to blame everyone. So I went on the YouTube. I couldn't go to TikTok. I went on the YouTube, check a few recent uploaded astrologer talking about 6 planet retrograde. They all sound very fine, very positive, and help us people how to use it. I'm very happy. Only one case is what I read in the Taiwanese newspaper, and I just I really don't like that. So I think at this moment we have Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, and Mercury. If we include Saturn, sorry, I ignore it. Saturn, Chiron.
And
Venus just turned. Venus stationary.
Just stationed today.
Yeah, Venus is stationary. Yeah, so it's quite interesting.
Jupiter hasn't quite gone to its retrograde yet, but it does in a couple of days. So they swap. So they kind of a change of guard. When Venus finished the stationary turn direct, Jupiter started to turn retrograde.
Yeah, Venus is still retrograde today, I think, as of filming this. But it looks like
I can tell you the dates actually, because I've got them written down. So Venus stations direct, which means it stops still for a couple of days on the 3rd and 4th of September before it moves forward. And then on the 4th and 5th of September, Jupiter stations retrograde, which means it stops before it moves backwards. So we'll have both of those stationary at the same time in a square aspect, which is really intense, adds to the intensity of a stationed planet when 2 stationed planets are in a square to each other with Uranus.
They'll be making a square, right?
Yeah, exactly. With Uranus as well. So that's really interesting. But I just want to sort of agree with what you said about all of these planets at the moment. It's through the whole of September. Once Jupiter goes retrograde, as I say, in a few days' time, we'll have Jupiter Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Chiron. So all the outers will be retrograde throughout September. And then I think I double checked. I think it's the 11th of October the 11th of October when Pluto goes direct. So we've got sort of a month and a half. And I don't know what you guys think. You might, Marcus, I'm sure you might have a traditional sort of take on retrogradation. I know traditionally it is looked at as fairly negative, but I like to think of it as a time for introspection, for reflection, for going inwards. It's also, you've already alluded to the fact that it's a hit on a transit. So when you have a transit of one of these outer planets, it'll have gone across one of your planets. If you do have a transit, then it'll go back again for a second hit retrograde, and then back again for the final. Sometimes if it's a very slow planet like Pluto, you can actually have, or Neptune, you can actually have 5 hits, but normally it's 3 if a retrograde is involved, which makes the whole idea of a transit become a very, very process-driven thing. It's kind of, you go backwards, you go forward, you go backwards, you go forwards, things happen, you process it, then you move on, then something else happens and you process it and you move on, and so on and so forth.
Very that. Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting aspect to it. You're right that the retrogradation traditionally was regarded as somewhat negative, but it's really, like most of astrology, it's very context dependent. So retrogrades on a micro level, like say in a horary chart, in a chart about an event or a birth chart, if the planet's retrograde, it's considered traditionally to be somewhat more difficult to work with in some respects, but it has specific meanings. So retrogradation traditionally was associated with repetition, or going back over something, or having to do it again. But in specific contexts, that can be really good. So like finding lost objects, when you have the lost thing signified by a retrograde planet, it means it's coming back to you. So if in terms of sort of attaining something new, retrogradation tends to delay it because it puts the thing back. It sort of moves it against the direction. But if it's something old that you want to return to, retrogradation is brilliant. It's exactly what you want to see. So practically speaking, is retrogradation bad? Well, it's context dependent. If you want to go over and review and sort of reconsider things, it's good. So like revision, like literally if you're revising for an exam, you want things to be in retrograde. You want to go back home. So it's like going back and over stuff so that you can assimilate it. That is really, to me, the true function of retrogradation. It's all about, in order to properly assimilate and learn things, we need to review them, we need to recap them, we need to re-experience them. And with some things in our individual lives or in the experiences of the collective, we need to reconsider or go over things more than once in order to get what we need to get from them, in order to learn whatever lessons we need to learn or accomplish whatever we need to accomplish. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. It depends on what it is. Can it be annoying? Yeah, it can be super annoying, but it's not bad. It's like, it's just, it depends. So, and I don't think the concept you mentioned, Mandy, of it being retrogradation in sort of modern astrology seen more as being an internalized thing. I think that's totally accurate from what I've seen. It doesn't seem to, I haven't seen it crop up in that way in traditional texts, but it does seem to be commensurate with experience to me, that when a planet's retrograde, you sort of and I think maybe the crossover with those concepts is the idea of reviewing or going back over, because when you're reviewing something, say that process of assimilating, there is an internal thing going on there where you're sort of, so I know for myself, I have a prominent retrograde Saturn, and I know from talking to others that very often I feel my Saturn, others don't see it so much. Do you know what I mean? So like others will say, oh, you seem really confident in this. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Like sort of obviously like so retrograde planets can be experienced more internally. So I'd imagine that with a retrograde Jupiter, for example, that person might secretly be a lot more confident or open than they at first appear externally, for example. But there's all sorts of different ways you can slice it. So is retrograde bad? No. Does it mean the world's going to end? No. Can it mean redoing or recapping or things being reversed a little bit? Yeah.
Well, thank goodness we all agree on that one. It's kind of, retrograde can give you a second chance as well, which is a positive thing. It might not feel like fun when you've messed up and you have a second chance to make things right, but and in psychological astrology, of course, when you have, if we're talking about these outer planets that are all going to be retrograde soon, Jupiter through to Pluto and also including Chiron, if they make transits to your personal planets in psychological astrology, that brings up your psychological sort of what's the word I'm looking for, the psychological things that are sort of deep in you, your psychological programs from childhood. So sometimes events will happen or feelings will come up that will be something in and of themselves, but psychologically they can relate back to sort of programs, and complexes was the word I was looking for. Learned programs from when you were kind of growing up, and that is sometimes what a lot of people find most difficult about these heavy transits to their personal planets, especially from the outers. But it's also about growth. It's where we grow in our lives, and it's where we gain, particularly if we're talking about Jupiter, it's where we gain wisdom. And if we're looking at this Venus square Jupiter at the moment, that's going to affect you as a transit if you have any planets or angles between, say, 10 and 17 degrees of the fixed signs. The fixed signs, as we know, it's Taurus, Scorpio, Leo and Aquarius. So anything in that'll be something something might come up for you, and it might be quite intense as well, because they're both stationed at that time.
Positive, because it's involving both of those positive planets. So exactly. A little bit of work or tension, but generally pretty good, right?
It's optimism, isn't it? It's optimism. Venus and Jupiter. It's about your social life. It's about optimism. It's about your resources, your energies. It can go too far in overindulgence. You know, if you've been overindulgent, you spent too much, you've got into debt, you might have to sort of cut back a little bit during this retrograde period, that kind of thing. But I mean, like they are the traditional benefic planets, aren't they? Jupiter and Venus together. So it's about our values, isn't it? I mean, do you think this Venus in Leo retrograde period has been a lot about reassessing our values, isn't it, as well? That's coming to an end now, and we may have been doing that kind of work. Drama, has there been excessive drama in your life? I mean, it's Leo after all, Venus in Leo after all, who knows? But maybe it's time to play, Leo likes to play, Jupiter likes to play. Maybe it's time to play and have a bit of fun again in our lives.
Yeah, it depends what you mean by drama, because I think I totally agree with all that, Mandy. And but just a semantic point, perhaps I've seen, because there's a difference between Leo drama and Scorpio drama, for example.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Because because Leo drama is like, it can just be outward events, and sort of like it can be exuberant, but not necessarily incredibly painful. But Scorpio drama is like what people say when they're dating when they don't like drama. And those people, by the way, just for anyone watching who is dating, are usually the worst. So if anyone puts on their dating profile no drama, avoid them. Anyway, that's just got to say that as a Scorpio rising. Saying that right now.
Are you speaking from experience?
No, just generally people watching, Mandy, not from painful experience. But anyway,
no drama.
No drama. No drama. But the point about that is, I think that the Venus in Leo drama is probably likely to be a bit fluffier, a bit more. When I say fluffier, I don't mean inconsequential. I just mean lighter. It's
flamboyant.
It's outward. It's like it's more performative. And it will tend to have a result of opening you up to new possibilities. So it's a bit more like Sex and the City, Bridget Jones kind of drama, rather than Dancer in the Dark, Schindler's List kind of drama.
Because you'll see Leo drama coming at you and for you, whereas Scorpio will sneak up. You
Yeah.
won't see it
Scorpio is
coming.
emotional drama.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
This is not that. Yeah.
So interesting. When we're talking about this, we totally stepped into that Venus square Jupiter feeling we were talking about, because it's like so funny, and we that's just like a little bit exaggerated and play with it. You know, we both three of us, we are just kind of already exercise that kind of you know, manifested that Jupiter, Venus square Jupiter. Is so interesting. But I noticed one thing, Mandi. I know you started your YouTube channel, and also I think you talk about this morning, right? I said this morning, yeah, you upload that, because I saw Mandi talking about the Venus square, the Jupiter things, and was like during both planets are stationary. I said, yeah, how often you going to see two planets square each other and in a stationary, and also, you know, that is kind of in a fixed side, it will be like, hey, I'm not a giveaway, but it's like we're hanging on there. But with both planet is a beneficial planet, maybe it's just like let's make it right. Let's do something and make it happen, make it right. But hanging on there, a little bit longer, rather than just like let's finish this quickly. You know.
I think that bear with me on this, because I think this Venus Jupiter square with Uranus there has something to say about honesty, because Uranus is all about honesty and brutal honesty, and Jupiter is about ethical honesty, and Venus in Leo, you know, the whole thing, it just struck me, as I say, when I was talking about it this morning, it just struck me that there's a real kind of theme here of honesty there, because Uranus can be very brutal. It can sort of say it like it is and really think about the consequences, whereas Venus wants to kind of soften it a little bit. And we've still got Mercury retrograde, of course, so we have to think about what we say and how we say it. And I think really it's an invitation to stay within our integrity in our relationships and in the way that we communicate with other people, you know, not just honesty, but with respect for other people, with empathy and sensitivity coming off the back of that Pisces full moon, and to be accountable as well, because that Uranus can really throw us a little bit of a curveball if we let it, you know, because we know Uranus brings, it's unpredictable, it brings changes, it can bring shocks, it can bring creative breakthroughs, maybe it can bring things we can't even imagine. So what changes do we need to make, and is the time right? That's another thing to think about, isn't it?
Cool.
Just made me think, Mandi, just in terms of I think we've done this before, but we haven't done it for a while, of just sort of like maybe delineating that square between those two, because it's been hanging around for 3 or 4 months now, I think, almost, you know, that. And so like the Jupiter in Taurus with Uranus in the same sign, you're saying, if we carry on with that theme about honesty, and particularly moral honesty and truth, because both Jupiter and Uranus have a truth intersection, because Jupiter is about, as you're saying, moral truth, and Uranus is about radical truth, like don't care whether this is moral or not truth, it's amoral. But they both have a truth crossover. And in Taurus, it's a very physical sign. So, and the square to Venus in Leo, the Venus in Leo is sort of like wanting to be personally valued. So what we were saying about earlier about the overspending thing, for example, might be, I want to feel good about myself. I want to be acknowledged. I want to feel my own value. But maybe the Jupiter Uranus square from Taurus is like, yeah, but you've been overspending, and now you know there's maybe an imbalance between the truth of like you're trying to grow and expand and sort of feed yourself through sort of maybe overspending, and that sort of, you have to cut that off a little bit. That there's some sort of balance that needs to be struck there. I don't know, what other sort of thoughts did you guys have on this square? Because there can be various ways that can play out. And I don't see it as being a negative. Like, this is something that will add up, I think, to a positive. But it's something where there's some sort of balance to be struck between the Venus and Leo need to be personally valued and acknowledged, and to sort of like feel appreciated for who one truly is. And then the Jupiter with Uranus in Taurus, which is all about growing one's assets and sort of tidying up on the physical sort of side of things. So there might be the excess here, because Venus Jupiter always tends to excess. Might be you might overspend or overeat or overindulge in some way, that then actually has a bit of a negative knock-on effect on one's self-esteem, and you have to adjust or something, you know?
Yeah, and both Leo and Taurus are very loyal signs. It's about loyalty. So it's about, and they're fixed signs as well. So it's kind of working on your relationships and being loyal in your relationships, rather than that overindulgence of pursuing the shiny new thing all the time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And also Taurus is about maintenance as well. And when we're talking about overspending, do you really need, not just in your relationships, but do you, this object, this material object, do you need this shiny new thing, or fix up the thing that you've got? It's better for the environment, it's better for your bank balance, for example. So that kind of maintenance of things. But of course, fixity can get attached for too long and find it hard to let go, and that might be where Uranus comes along into it to sort of shake things up, sort of give you a little bit more clarity on what you need to hold on to, maintain, fix, or what you should actually try and let go of, where your loyalty should lie, or where you don't really need to be loyal anymore. Particularly.
Oh, go on, sorry, Mandy. Go on.
No, that's it. I was just in danger of waffling then, so off you go.
You never waffle. Yours.
No,
that's not true. But no, so the Uranus thing, I was thinking, apart from the truth overlap, I love that, Mandy, what you said about the Uranus severing, because the other function of Uranus is, of course, to cut off things that aren't. So we think of Mars as cutting, but it's a different, like, Uranus is just like, this isn't working, this isn't true, or it isn't serving you. It's not. So Mars can be just destructive. It can cut things off because it likes to cut stuff. Uranus will cut things off because it's just, this isn't true. It isn't true. So it has to, or it isn't. So with Jupiter, with Uranus, it's like Jupiter will be the moral compass there, or that this will serve your growth. And Uranus will go, but this won't, and therefore we'll cut that off. So I think that's where this is going to end up, because from a trad perspective, trad astro, the 10th sign, so Jupiter and Uranus are in the 10th sign from Venus. So from a traditional astro, those will have the final say, because they're what would be traditionally described as in an overcoming position. So it's the Jupiter Uranus that has the arbitrating role here in this thing. But what's interesting, of course, is they're both in signs ruled by Venus. They're both in Taurus. So Venus is ruling them. So it's going to be, I see this as a very positive square, as in one that will end up with some really good results. But it's so funny, Mandy, what you're saying about the overspending and then recalibrating, because I literally just watched a YouTube video today about some lady who'd read a book about essentialism, and about how it made her do a couple of years of not spending on any new stuff, and that caused her to appreciate the value of the things that she had, and has really improved the quality of her life and how she feels. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. And I was just like, and obviously this, like, Jupiter's right on my descendant right now, and Venus is also on another important point in my chart. So it's just, it's interesting. Anyway,
brilliant.
Cool. Should we move to the next topic? That will be the new moon on the 15th of September. And very interesting, because this new moon has tried Jupiter and Uranus. So we have talked about half part of this chart.
Okay.
Let's go to the new moon. Okay, we have this new moon on the 15th of September, and someone conjunct at 21 degree Virgo, 58 minutes, and we have a Mercury stationary there.
Ooh. Is that stationary direct? Yes. So that's
stationary direct.
Okay.
So who want to go
Mercury
first?
stationary direct, and we've got nothing to say.
No. I mean,
that's not true.
I'm quite happy to jump in. I mean,
Please.
let the Aries gob off first. I mean, so
Okay. Okay,
so
let me do advertising. Well,
Okay.
I already recorded a video about the stationary planet and collaborated with Canadian astrologer Nadiya Shah, put on her YouTube channel, Nadiya Shah. So if you want to know the beginner level about planet stationary and how to find out planet stationary and how to interpret it, and also the recent stationary planet, please go to visit her website, and there is my video there. Please, and if you like, please share, like. Now I will hand it to Marcus.
Amazing. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I mean, the first things I noticed are the two oppositions in this chart. I mean, they both involve modern planets, not so much but well, no, one of them involves. So Mercury stationary is opposing Saturn, traditional planet, and then the new moon itself, the lunation, is opposing Neptune. So the Mercury stationing opposing Saturn, that just in general is like, for this next lunar month, the month particularly might start with a lot of communications related blockages, just delays, slowdowns, because which will improve and we over the month, because Mercury is stationing direct, which traditionally was said to be like a sick person just starting to recover. So it's because they're standing still but about to start moving forward again. And similarly, it's opposing Saturn, but it's moving away from that Saturn. So it's like Mercury starts the month not moving and opposing Saturn, which of course symbolizes delays and blockages and things in the way, obstacles. That's the word I'm looking for. So, and Mercury in Virgo is all about communication, analysis, everything to do with Mercury is the messenger. So this could be transport, because it's in an earth sign, could be more earthbound transport, like planes, cars, and not planes, trains and cars, and sort of like earthbound transport. But we could also be looking at some of the financial, commercial, because Mercury has a lot to do with commerce as well, because it's particularly digital, electronic commerce. So there could be just problems with electronics and trains and cars and stuff like that, just delays of transport systems and all that stuff, which should ease up as the month goes on. And then the new moon, the lunation opposing Neptune, it's a month of sort of confusion, or sort of intentions not being very clear, or things being misconstrued in general. So it's like that there might be new beginnings being made, or new plans that are about to be put in place to do with communication or commerce or transport or whatever, and there's some confusion, and sort of, so that may be contributing to the delays and stuff. That's how I'm reading that. What do you guys think?
Mandi.
I was looking at that when you were talking about Mercury, Saturn, and I got the sort of the symbolism of kind of things being temporarily a little bit constipated, not literally talking bodily might be the case, but things a little bit constipated when it all the things like you saying, commerce, communication, information, learning, transport, that kind of thing as well. And then with that Mercury opposite Saturn, it's about, well, you're not being told everything you need to know, and you want to know the facts, you want the information. And that's where I was thinking about constipation. It's kind of stuck somewhere in the system, it's stuck somewhere in the tube on the way down to being delivered to you, kind of thing. I don't want to stretch that analogy too far, but and then, as I say, we've got that Mercury ruled new moon in Virgo there, obviously. Yeah. So we're back into Virgo and Pisces again. So it might be that you have to try and trust your intuition on things a little bit more at this time, rather than the actual facts that you don't know yet. There might be also some fear of getting it wrong, because Saturn is fear, getting it wrong, saying the wrong thing, getting the wrong information. So that's another thing to think about before Mercury kind of moves forward and things start to move. But we do have that new moon in a trine, as we've already, I think, mentioned. It's in a trine to Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus. which is interesting. Again, it's kind of a trine is kind of an easier aspect, isn't it? I mean, in terms of more mundanely, in terms of mundane astrology, it suggests to me earth movements. Taurus is about the earth movements, tremors, that kind of thing could possibly come up. Time. Environmentalism, of course. Virgo, we've already talked about Virgo, about cleaning things up. Another sign that we need to sort of clean up the planet, or other things that are to do with Taurus might need a cleanup, such as food production, healthcare, welfare, financial stuff, technology, that kind of thing. And of course, Uranus and Jupiter together, it's an awakening combination, isn't it? It kind of wakes you up to the reality of things, because Taurus is an earth sign after all. So we need to sort of wake up to what is actually going on in our planet and in our lives, and sort of give it a good clean up, perhaps, is another sort of thing. It's a new moon, so all we talked about Mercury and Saturn, we don't have all the information yet, and in a new moon we can't see everything yet because the moon is dark. So it's a kind of a little bit of almost like a little bit of a awakening game, an awakening, but also a kind of a waiting game as well, possibly, with this new moon.
I love that.
Marcus.
Fantastic, Mandy. Really, really like that. Sort of like, if I was to sort of medicalize this chart a bit, it's almost like brain fog and IBS, and sort of suddenly, you're sort of farty and bloaty and chemically sensitive, and suddenly having to sort of like, okay, I've got to sort my diet out and work on these food sensitivities and work, get the digestion right and all of that. So, that'd be the analogy. I mean, I really like what you're saying there, Mandy, and it strikes me that sort of the trines of the new moon, very tight, not quite exact, but to the Uranus and then the Jupiter, both of those planets being retrograde. It's sort of, again, something to do with this general retrograde season of sort of like having to, okay, we need to go back and look at this again, because clearly there are some major sort of confusing issues. And as you were saying, Mandy, it could be the environmentalism thing. Sort of the Neptune could be to do with oils, chemicals, plastics,
water pollution.
Yes, pollution, all of that kind of stuff. And the Jupiter Uranus is, we need radical solutions. We need to revisit radical solutions to tidy this up, to get this sorted. And then the Mercury Saturn thing, sort of there's a bit of deadlock. I was looking at the lunar mansion, and the moon's lunar mansion, which I sometimes look at. Now it depends what system you're using, and I use the tropical lunar mansions, which are considered to be anathema by some astrologers, because of course the lunar mansions are based on the constellations. But the tropical lunar mansions were the ones that we use sort of traditionally, and they do seem to work. And this one, the image for this was the 14th mansion in tropical astrology, which is, the image is the sort of dog holding its tail in its mouth, chasing its tail. And some of the meanings of it, I thought were really interesting. Some of the traditional uses, to heal the sick, to make images for the lover, man and wife. This is for traditional ancient magical uses. To heal the sick with medicine, to destroy harvests and plants, for the destruction of travel on roads, and for the benefit of kings. So it's fascinating, like mixture of functions, but the basic meaning of the mansion was breaking apart of restrictive or inappropriate bonds and dissolution. And I think the image of a dog chasing its tail is very relevant. If you're engaged in this pointless pursuit, this repetition of the same gubbins, you've got to make a change to effect positive resolution. And I think that's the medicine, the healing of the sick. But you've but you've also got the problems with travel, the problems with moving forward with things. So some of the themes that the whole chart, as those, particularly those aspects, seem to describe is perhaps a little bit encapsulated in the lunar mansion of the new moon, which I think is really interesting.
Perfect.
Andy? Yeah.
A lot of synchronicities there, actually, with that lunar. It's not something I ever really pay attention to. I think I might have to.
No, they're really handy, actually.
Yeah.
So interesting. I mean, and when I look at this chart, I was stunned by that Mercury stationary, how often you will have the new moon or full moon chart. You have one planet stationary, especially, Mercury, when they're stationary, it's just a 1 day or two and it's gone, and how often you get it. So it's definitely, like you say, it's focused on that Virgo and the Mercury side, maybe the message maybe overflowed, or maybe we have to learn how to differentiate the message and how to, find out what is true or what is useful. And because there will be so many messages coming through. And I was laughing totally terribly because of what Marcus described, the medical issue and the situation. That was totally what I experienced last month. But because after operation, they said what I can eat, what I couldn't eat. If I eat something, then I will feel my stomach is really growing or something. Now, but I was laughing because I said, thank God it's finished for me, and I don't want it back.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, but when Marcus mentioned about the lunar mansion, I just want to say one thing is very interesting, because this new moon is also aligned, or conjunction, people say, conjunct with a fixed star in the tail of the Leo, so called Denebola, the tail of lion. But it's very interesting because the modern astrology, like Dr. Brendan Brady, give a meaning about uniqueness, and very, very unconventional and unique and never be the same. So it would be like it's trying to create something and don't want to repeat the old pattern, and try to find the origin of self. That was a very interesting description of this fixed star in the modern term. But in the more little bit, 20th century, early 20th century, I think the Vivian Robson talked about this the tail of a lion, and they say, it's very interesting. It gives the sweet judgment and the despair, regret, public disgrace, or turn the happiness to anger very, very quickly. So that was, that's a different meaning, a different interpretation. But I think with this Sun and Moon trine Uranus, that would be the meaning more like what Dr. Benedict Brady talking about, the original idea, and try to be different. And which another thing I want to put this in, because it's very unusual, that is the comet. The comet called Nishimura was discovered on the 11th of August. Very quick. Because it was a block in the sunlight, we can't see it. And Japanese amateur astronomer discovered it. And then when we discovered it, it's just like it's nearly going to be seen, because it's going to be seen from next week. I think it will reach the magnitude 6 from the 5th of September, but more likely from the 7th of September, the morning of 7th September, it will reach the magnitude 4, which means it's like a star in the sky we can easily to see. So in the morning, maybe 1 or 2 hours before sunrise, if you get up early and then go to see on the east horizon before the sunrise, you may able to see a beautiful comet. This would be the bright comet of this year. And it's out of blue, because have we heard about it? No, until August, suddenly a comet been discovered. This is why I love comet. It's always surprising. And guess what? I was before our recording, I was prepare another recording for the comet. I want to put it on next week. Now I just realized on the 15th of September, the comet is aligned with this new moon. Exact. Wow. Let me show you the star map. You can visualizing it. It will be more interesting. This is the software everyone can use, called Stellarium. It's a free software. So you can see it. Here is Sun, and I put the ecliptic grid. So here's Sun aligned with Moon. Moon is here. Can you see it?
Yep. Wow. Yep.
Yeah, Moon is here.
Yep.
And then you have the comet Nishimura is here.
Wow.
Oh, right next to Denebola.
Yeah, right next to Denebola. It's right next to Denebola. So this Denebola may have a very powerful meaning for next month or next year.
That's like cosmic highlighter being applied to Denebola there at the new moon.
Each other just miss each other for 15 minutes.
They're
Wow.
right next to each other in the sky,
right next to each other,
Wow.
right next to each other, and
So
on the day of the new moon.
Highly significant. Wow, that's amazing, Rod. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And just the final thoughts, just on Delabola, you were saying about the different Bernadette's interpretation, and I totally agree that it seems it's more in line with Bernadette's because of the trine to the Uranus and Jupiter. But also I do like to try and Venn diagram and bring, so like the more negative Robson interpretation, the opposition to Neptune. The idea of, I think you said, fall from grace or disgrace, or I can't remember what words you used.
Yes, it's a disgrace of public disgrace.
Public disgrace. There could be some overlap here in the sudden, because it's a Venus-Saturn star, isn't it, Delabola, according to the ancients?
Yeah, Venus-Saturn, yes.
Saturn. So it's got this kind of vibe of it could be some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, like when Mandy, you alluded to possibly environmental or some stuff that causes confusion and maybe related to technological or communications delays and sort of causes depression or problems or just, untruths or factual blockages. Let's say that's almost like a perfect euphemism, a factual blockage for truth that has not been revealed to the public, perhaps deliberately, for example, and that being revealed, and then we need to reconfigure this, and we need to come up with some unique, new, inspired ways to do that reconfiguring, something along, do you know what I mean? Something along those lines.
I can think that that feels to me very necessary in British politics at the moment, especially when there are a lot of politicians in the UK who are behaving in ways that in past times they would be a public disgrace, and yet they just carry on and carry on without any accountability. I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know whether this configuration has anything to do with accountability or not, but we might be ripe for a little bit of accountability.
Yeah,
maybe.
Wow.
Talking about integrity.
Certainly tidying things up, reviewing and tidying, and kind of like cleaning the decks a little bit. I'm not sure it's quite accountability. Feels more like there's a bit of a weight of Saturn coming in there. Do you know what I mean? So this is more like sort of tidying things up and sort of cleaning things up a bit, cleaning up,
maybe even sweeping things under the carpet.
Could be, but I do think there is the Uranus involved in there, Mandy. So the Neptune is the sweeping things under the carpet, but the Uranus Jupiter
rolling back the carpet and finding those things that have been.
Oh my God, this carpet is soaked through with oil and stuff. Carpet's filthy. Yeah, it looked really nice from a distance, but actually it's completely gross. Something. Yeah.
Well, you came round to my house then. You were at my house then before I cleaned up then, were you?
No, haven't seen it.
So interesting. I mean, well,
we shall see. We'll see what happens.
It is about time. I mean,
that's what's great, isn't it, about these new things? We can kind of say, "Oh, this is what this means, and this is what that means," but they're still like the joy is actually seeing it unfold IRL, isn't it? Real life. This is how we learn. It's brilliant. I love it. Well done, Rod. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm crazy about the Comet.
Rocket Man.
Every time there's a Comet, I just couldn't stop to study it and find out is a position on the zodiac or the old sky. And sometimes it is. I mean, to be honest, what amazing about astrology is no matter you are using the traditional way or you're using the psychological, even evolutionary or whatever, and then we somehow can always find a different interpretation, but similar theme. But like we are talking about a chart, but when I added a comet in out of blue, but we somehow still find the meaning of it, and it was quite interesting.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing. You've got different angles, different viewports, different windows on the same courtyard or whatever, to use that old metaphor. And each window will give us slightly different view, but you're still looking at the same courtyard, and therefore, And the windows we're using aren't so different. As you said, we're all using tropical astrology with the same basic tools and basic sort of themes and principles. So, you should be able to arrive at consensus, and each viewpoint will give you slightly different angles and different inputs. But in theory, if you're doing it, in my view, right, whatever that means, is to kind of, you should be able to synthesize them and arrive at a constructive and possibly more fleshed out picture than you would do if you're just using one set of tools. But
astrology is a language. After all, astrology is actually a language. And the language is the same, but the grammar is slightly different when you're looking at doing things slightly differently, and the way that language is expressed as well.
Lovely. Wow, thank you both. Thanks, Mandi, and thanks, Marcus. Well, today we really covered a lot from the full moon chart, from the Mars in the Libra, and spend a lot of time to see the debility planet in the different view from the modern to the traditional. And we also covered the retrograde planet, especially Jupiter, Venus square Jupiter. That was a very interesting discussion because of both benefic planet. How could it, when they square each other, and how could we interpret that? And then we covered the new moon chart, and then I just surprise everyone. Hey, there's Comet coming up. So next Friday, because I usually have a little bit confused about if we have a 5 Friday, because every Friday we have a program. I usually plan for 4. And when you say the fourth week, I was just fifth week, I was just what should I do? But hey, this week, next week, I'm going to prepare a video as hours length talking about this comet from when to be discovered. And I'll also introduce you some tool, like how to edit comet into that. You can see the stellarium, because it's not automatically, you have to add them in. So also help you to find the comet's zodiac position by using the JPL, NASA JPL program. Using it's on website, so help you to just find the target and how to convert it the position to the eclipse longitude, and also a little bit interpretation about the comet's path in the sky and the sign. It will pass the Leo, Virgo, and the Libra. More likely, Virgo and the Leo are most important. These 2 signs, and so it's very interesting. So next week I will upload this video, and then only I think the 15th we will have the mundane astrology discussion, and that week we will come back. Okay, so and don't forget, because we have our A.O.A conference on the 1st to 3rd of December, and the early bird discount still there. So grab your chance. Also, I hope you don't mind, I want to do the advertising for another school.
oh, yes.
Surprise. Okay, it's because I participated. It's our friend Wade Cave. He organized a world astrology summit, and it's the first, I think, it's the first mundane astrology theme conference. And it is a great honor to participate, to be part of it. And I will talk about the China and East Asia for the coming up year. So I would examine the average English chart and the eclipse chart for China and Japan and Korea nearby area. So the conference would be on the 23rd and 24th September. 23rd and 24th September. So if you haven't bought a ticket, please go to visit STA's website, www.sta.co, and you will find the conference ticket there. So thanks everybody. God, I keep doing the advertising today. I think that's also Mercury. Okay, thanks everyone, and have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.